I'm here today to talk about Meshtastic. I think we've all heard the word in chat, at least if not today, sometime before. And we're going to talk about what it is, how it works, what the hardware looks like, how you can get involved, how you can benefit from it, and how you can contribute to it. So this is an educational thing. We want to raise awareness. Also want to mention later on, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the legal stuff, FCC rules, but this is not legal advice. I am not your lawyer. I am not a lawyer. So we're going to intro it. We'll talk about the gear, the hardware essentially. We'll give you some resources, and then we have a game we're going to play tonight. So this is me. I'm Ben. My biggest project I have going on right now is my wife and 4 daughters. It's a long-term project. It's been going on for a while, 18 years to be exact, 18 years next month. I currently work professionally. What pays the bills is that orange logo up there on the top right, UKG, formerly known as Kronos, working on time and attendance, payroll systems, anything to do with clocking people's time. So if you've gone into the hospital and seen the time clocks on the walls and stuff like that, I set those up. Back in the day when I was a younger man, I did tower climbing, installed antennas, stuff like that. I worked for a JEA contractor, and I was also a former FEMA communications officer and had a lot of fun going to hurricanes and other events and deploying mobile comms and sat comms and fun stuff like that. So my current hobbies are all things radio, ham radio, satellite, microwave. You can read the list there. I've been a ham since 2002, so I think that puts me somewhere between a newbie and an old timer. I don't know. And back when I started, my call sign was quite the mouthful, KG4RRV. We got rid of that really quickly and switched over to K7B. All right, here you go, Panda.
Yeah. So I'm Panda. I don't have as much of a long-term project or investment as Ben, but I'm a very proud dog dad. I love getting outdoors. My day job right now, I hack a bunch of governments and schools and various organizations who are looking to secure themselves. Getting outside any chance I get is always good. Fishing, etc. My best ideas kind of always hit when I'm, out on my bike or, away from technology, weird enough. I love electronics. If you were at B-Sides Jacksonville, I made the badges. I also helped build the telephone challenge, the badge challenge. There was a lot of ham radio enthusiasts there as well, but we were in that room with a lot of the radio stuff as well. I love phones, I love RF, encryption. My radio interests have always been more data than voice. I personally, because I'm a phone nerd, I like talking on the phone more than the radio. Many interests.
Soldering.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So like I mentioned, I built those badges at B-Sides. I do a lot of electronic badges and competitions focused around teaching either soldering or specific electronic skills, or at B-Sides Jacksonville, the phone challenge that I built this year taught you kind of how to tap into phone lines, how PBXs work, how to exploit some of that stuff. Phone technology isn't shown off that much anymore, and if you're not kind of an esoteric system admin, you don't see a lot of the stuff, so I thought that was cool to bring out. Sometimes if anyone goes to DEF CON, you might see me running around as a panda with a telephone. I help run Jacksonville JacksMesh. I started the group. I have a jacksmesh.com if you guys are interested in checking it out. We meet the first Monday at Southern Grounds & Co. in Avondale, and it's been a pretty good group so far. It's pretty much just a bunch of us on Discord regularly plotting to make Jacksonville a little more Meshtastic friendly. And we'll get into, one of the cool things I like about Meshtastic, and it took me a while to believe in the technology. When I first ran into it, it was at DEF CON, and I think the largest network in the world is like 80 nodes. We blew past that immediately. We had around 400 nodes that year. We broke it really badly. This was in Vegas. The year after, we had about 1,200 nodes all over the strip communicating encrypted messages to each other. Seeing something like that, I'm like, I want to bring that back home. I want to see that in, my city, my area. Yeah, as you grow Meshtastic, the community grows. Every node actually builds the network. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, I also run a company called Comms for All that we build challenges that are Meshtastic based. So I've done capture the flag challenges for a bunch of college kids. NCAE cyber games. I ran a challenge for them for their finales last year. And then I run stuff at different hacker conferences. But I've run a couple Meshtastic based challenges where you actually have to find something in the physical location, do some various hacker tasks, and then get into private channels where you have other things going on. So.
All right, so let's get into what Meshtastic is and exactly what it does. It's a project, and that's one thing we'll talk about later, is that it's not a corporation or a company that is for profit or anything like that. It's not a government, it's not anything like that. It's community driven, it's open source. So you don't like the latest release of firmware, write your own. You don't like the software, write your own. It's that easy. And so this allows us to communicate off the grid. We're not relying on internet. There's no server farm that's going to go down. There's no cell service that's going to go down. There's no switch that the government can flip off if they decide, we don't want people communicating this way anymore. They can't do that. So
I just might add something. So Meshtastic is an open source project that is built on top of a technology called LoRa. LoRa is a proprietary modulation technique. So they actually chirp the signal. It looks really cool. If you look up LoRa modulation technique in Google, you'll see a bunch of the spectrograms. Anyway, the only reason I point that out, if you build hardware, there is a company, Semtech, that owns that proprietary modulation technique and builds the chips and owns the patents for the chips to do that modulation technique. There's a bunch of companies that produce that stuff. Meshtastic is one of the projects that is utilizing the LoRa technology. It's exciting because it meshes all these nodes together. There's other projects that could just be, a gate control for something that's a mile away or whatever else. But the LoRa technology is important to know is the underlying thing, and that's not, specifically open source. It's a proprietary hardware.
So to put it into ham radio terms, think of it like DMR or D-Star. That's the technology that's behind it. That's not the brand. D-Star is not ham radio, or DMR is not ham radio. It is just a mode that we use to accomplish that communications.
Yeah.
So I kind of just wanted to put it into
that's perfect.
hammy terms.
Oh, and I am a ham can for NLS. I think I forgot to put it on my slide. But,
Man, that was the biggest thing everybody wanted to know.
Yeah.
We always tell each other our call signs. Let's get into the nitty gritty of exactly how it works and the kind of the fine details. You send your message, there's an app. So you'll have an app on your phone. It can be an app on a laptop. It's pretty much device agnostic is what I call it. It will work on almost anything, iPhone, Android, Windows, laptop, Mac. I know Linux, Unix flavors it'll run on. What am I missing? I'm sure
there's a lot of ways to interact with your radio, and if you're into any like programming or anything like that, you can connect to your radio and send messages directly from the computer as well, through various different programming languages. So there's a million different ways that you could interact with it. The most common, as he was mentioning, is Bluetooth. So like these nodes up here, you're gonna take your phone, download the app, and then connect to one of these radios. You're going to be able to see some of the status, on the radio directly and a message when it comes in. But to access all the settings, you're going to actually go to the app on your phone. And when you send a message out, it's going to send that across the Bluetooth to the node. That node's going to do the LoRa modulation, chirp the message, encrypt it to whatever standards your channel's set at, and send that out across the mesh. And then what it looks like is each of the people in that video, they're a node, and it's going to be passed on. These nodes have about a 2 mile, I would say it's based on line of sight. So like when there's interference, you're up to about 2 miles range between nodes. If you get over the trees and you have direct line of sight, an average node can go about 10 miles. So you can really quickly build a network across a city where everyone's kind of contributing and passing on these messages indiscriminately and contributing. And some places like in California, San Jose area, there's nodes everywhere. In Chicago, there's a really good network there where, if you're familiar with Chicago, because you're like a Kevin McAllister. So from O'Hare, you can actually message south of downtown. It's pretty crazy the amount of coverage that they've achieved, just by distributing nodes around the city. So
strategically placed nodes. Strategically placed nodes are the ideal thing for the system. Having a bunch of nodes in one spot unnecessarily aren't necessarily helpful. But if we have sites and places where we can put nodes and spread them out somewhat evenly, that's kind of your more ideal setup. So talking again about the end user experience, your phone, just want to clarify, your phone is really just acting as a screen and keyboard. I've used this on a phone with no SIM in it, no service, no Wi-Fi, and could still communicate. So I just want to stress that this isn't something that's relying on Wi-Fi or internet. Even if I had an old phone and I wanted to wire it in, I didn't have Bluetooth, I could just go USB to the phone, USB to my laptop if I wanted to. Wi-Fi, I could put this on a Wi-Fi network, and even though the internet's down, as long as the Wi-Fi network's still up, I can still get to my node anywhere on the Wi-Fi network. So as much as there's flexibility in the operating system you use, the device you use, there's also flexibility in how you connect. So Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cable as well. Additionally, outside of all that, there's standalone devices you can buy. They look a lot like old Blackberries. If anybody remembers old Blackberries.
Great.
Yeah,
that's the point.
Right over there.
That's
Mike's got one.
A TDEC, a LilyGo
LilyGo
TDEC.
TDEC. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Let me bring it up here.
And there's multiple keyboard options now if you're interested in this kind of node. These are fairly new. I would say like the development platform, the TDEC's been around for a while, but as far as the Meshtastic, they just redeveloped their touch UI, the interface that they're using on it. It's still not as advanced as using the app on your phone with one of these other nodes. However, it's a pretty good experience now, and it's getting better every day. Meshtastic's really actively developed, and there are other options too, not just the TDEC. There's I can't remember right now, but there's a pager that just came out not too long ago.
I think LilyGo makes there's the
awesome.
pager as well. So we'll play show and tell after the presentation, but this is an example of a device where you're not dependent on your cell phone. You're not running down your cell phone battery. It's an independent device where you can talk on, and it looks a lot like an old BlackBerry, just with a big antenna.
Also, props for the antenna. It's a nice antenna. This looks a little confusing, but the group messages use something called managed flood routing, and it's actually really simple. Like if I'm sending a message out, it's going, basically the key of it is that I only pass on a message one time. If I never heard a message before, I will take that message and I will pass it on. If I have heard that message before, I'm just going to discard it. So think about it like this. And I'm going to move back a little bit, this is a physical thing.
Yeah.
So if I send a message out, you're going to get it first. You're going to send that message out. That's going to, my message is going to continue on down the route. Other people are going to get it. By the time that they get it, because of SNR, by the time they're sending it out, you already got that message.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds really complicated, this managed flood routing thing, but it's really simple. It's just because there is distance and physics between radios. If you deny repeating a message more than one time, a lot of it just takes care of itself. And that was like the theory behind a lot of the initial stuff with the routing protocol. Yeah.
Does the system auto route, or do you have to build like the old packet stuff where you have to build the route?
So there are different modes. You don't have to worry about auto routing, or sorry, you don't have to worry about creating any like manual route stuff. However, there are different modes that you can set your radio on that affect the types of messages that it transmits and accepts, and we'll go into those in a couple slides.
Yeah. Or whether whether or not it'll even pass on a message. So
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like the mode that you set your radio to will affect kind of the greater network, but also what you're receiving as well. You know, so.
Anything else on this?
Mm-mm. And then this is the same thing. So like introducing the idea of a hop limit. So there's what I just mentioned, but then think about like a hop limit. When I send that message out to you guys, there's going to be a hop limit up front. You know, it could be 3, it could be, you know, whatever you set it to, it could be 7, you know, but it's going to count down. Each node is going to subtract from that hop limit. And once that hop limit is done, it's going to be discarded. So between those two things, that's pretty much the current state of managed flood routing between these radios and how it works. And this image is just showing kind of the SNR thing I was talking about, that there's, you know, time it takes to go between the radios. So it's time versus node ID is what that right box is. And then when a radio receives a message, it sends out an acknowledgement, so that it received it. So yeah, this is the radio storage. Some messages on itself, around 30 of the messages, and then longer term storage would be in the client app. But you really have to think about these radios as their own device to a degree. And what I mean by that is like, it's going to store channels on the radio. You know, those keys and stuff are stored on the radio. Anytime you make a change in the app, it's going to go reboot your radio, because it goes and saves that config and then restarts the device to apply the config. So if you see your radio rebooting a bunch, don't freak out. You're changing stuff in the app and you probably had it reboot, you know,
Yep.
So totally expected. Yep.
So the practical use of the 30 messages is like I have different nodes. I have a base node at my house. When I get home, my phone connects to Wi-Fi. The node's on the Wi-Fi. If I've missed any messages that one heard that my other ones didn't, I'll get them then. If I am out and about, I have a truck node that's just sitting out there in my truck. Sometimes I bring my pocket node with me, which can repeat through the truck. Sometimes I forget it. So when I get back to my truck, I have messages waiting for me sometimes. So it's nice that the radio is the device itself, right? And it has its own amount of memory, its own program that it's running, and your phone is really just an end user interface. So this can be very long range. The record right now, unless it got broken in the last month when we started making this.
And that's actually, when you looked it up and put it on the slide, I was like surprised.
You're like, that's not right.
I haven't looked in a little
Yeah.
bit, and the last time I looked, it was like 46.
Yeah, it's 206 miles. Now, of course, that's ideal atmospheric conditions. That's the highest powered radios that they could do by law. That's high gain antennas, mountaintop to mountaintop type of stuff. For no reason should you expect to go 206 miles on a daily basis.
And by the way, the reason that it's so far and that these radios can be so small and low power for a 2 to 10 mile distance, you know, for the smaller radios, the reason that that all works like that is LoRa. So the LoRa modulation makes it really resilient to interference from other signals, and you know, you need less power as well to transmit, you know, over longer distances because
that was probably tropospheric ducting, like that 206 miles.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know the conditions for that. I'm sure it was something crazy for that, because the 46 miles was point to point between two mountains, so they had direct line of sight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how they got the 206. That's awesome.
Yeah, cool. All right. So a couple other features here we talked about before. You don't need phone service. It's decentralized. There's no server to go down, no server to shut down. They're not going to ask for your email address. You're not going to have to create a user account. By default, it does come out of the box encrypted. The battery life is a huge thing on this. Depending on how you have your node set, the power output, things like that, I've seen these nodes go over a week without having to recharge the battery. The primary use is obviously sending text messages. That's what everybody's doing during our meeting right now. This group over here, I'm calling them out. They're sending text messages.
Thank you guys. You guys are awesome.
And I know it's kind of rude to be a presenter and be on the phone during the meeting, but I'm doing what we're talking about, so that counts.
So yeah, I'm the presenter that, like, by design, I totally planned it. I didn't charge my node on purpose, and not that I forgot to charge it today. I just wanted to be a dedicated presenter.
Yeah, sure.
I have some nodes up there.
So, and then the other thing is GPS-based location. So some people are putting these things, they're hiding them in the headliners of their cars and stuff and using it as a low-cost tracking device for their car. As long as their car ends up somewhere where there's coverage though, right? So that's where we're talking about what he talked about with Chicago and Vegas and having this massive coverage in those cities. This one here is going to be the prize for the trivia game tonight, by the way. Not this little radio, but it's the exact same design. It has GPS built in right there. So if anybody wanted to, they could see where I am right now. And this one's set to high accuracy as well. So with the GPS, if you want to give people an idea like, okay, I'm in this neighborhood, I'm in this area of town, but I'm not comfortable saying I'm standing 3 feet within this spot, you can actually have it, what's the, dilute, I think? I think it's called dilution or something is the term. So you can have it dilute your GPS and just say, yeah, they're somewhere in this, 1,000-foot circle. So you know about where they are, but you can't walk up to them or anything like that.
If your device isn't GPS enabled, but you want to use some of those features, and you're in areas that have, where your cell phone's going to have GPS signal, that's a GPS, you may not always have as good a reception. You can use the GPS location from your cell phone when you're using the app and have that be what it transmits out. Also, there's other things involved here where, like, if you wanted to, you could transmit weather data, sensor data. So you're talking about programming, so like MQTT. So anything that you want to send with MQTT, you could actually relay over these nodes. And a lot of the nodes will use MQTT to send their location to web interfaces, and we'll talk about one of them that's like a map of Florida with a good amount of nodes on it.
Yeah. All right, so here's what we were talking about earlier. This isn't ham radio, everybody's saying right now. We can't encrypt stuff, so we know this isn't ham radio. But it can be, and we can use it for ham radio. So there's a couple things to consider. The privileges and the restrictions, right? We obviously can transmit more power. Right now, Part 95, which is what these operate under by default, is limited to 4 watts ERP. So
they're in the ISR band by
ISM
default,
band,
or ISM, sorry. The 915-ish megahertz.
Yeah.
Unlicensed.
Yeah, exactly.
Unlicensed band. So
2 to 928.
Exactly.
So I got into this. I'm wearing this shirt today. Well, let me stand in front of the camera. I'm wearing this shirt today, Dayton Hamvention 2023, because this is where I first learned about Meshtastic at Dayton in 23. And immediately I thought, wow, imagine as a ham radio operator what I could do. 10 watts ERP versus a measly 4. I could do a lot. And then I found out how well it works with just a half a watt, and was like, I don't need to use this on the ham band.
And you lose encryption. That's the big
And you
thing.
lose encryption as well.
if you like, I personally think of this as not just a ham thing, but an everyone thing. I think of encrypted, the ability to have encrypted communication between people is almost like a human right at this point. Whether or not you can afford a cell phone bill, live in an area with good coverage, whether or not, you're in an area where they even care to put, cell phone stuff there.
Yeah.
You should be able to chat with grandma, up a hill after a storm came through, and you should be able to do it with privacy. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So is this transmitting, or
Sorry.
excuse me, on the interface there, your human interface, so to speak?
Yeah.
Walkie-talkie, whatever. Is it, give you a digital display, with
Yeah.
alphanumeric characters and whatever?
Yeah.
Or is
It's just like a text messaging, sir. It's like if you're on WhatsApp or
okay, so
Telegram.
there's no voice?
There's no voice.
Correct.
No voice.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yeah.
Are there any additional hardware configurations that I have to do to a Heltec node to make it ham compatible?
So if you were running, because you can run on the ham band, so you can run ham frequencies, and you would have to buy a specific node for that. If you're doing one of the ISM bands, one of those nodes, you need to buy the hardware, the Heltec that's for that. It's just you would buy a different Heltec that is for the ham band. But if you transmit on the ISM, can you transmit the 10 watt?
Yeah.
So
As long as you
in
have a
that
ham radio
case-
license.
In that case,
You so
could, but you couldn't do it through that Heltec.
the Heltec hardware wise, the highest powered Heltec is a half a watt, which is this radio right here. That's what they call the high power one, is a half a watt. The older Heltecs are about a quarter watt or 100 milliwatts, somewhere around there. I forget. I think, no, 21 dBm, which is going to be about 100 milliwatts, if I remember.
This one here
Yeah,
is
that
a
one there.
Heltec V3.
So that's what they call the version 3. This is the version 4. And really the big difference is just transmit power. This one does a half a watt. But keep in mind, this battery's not going to last as long as his is either if I'm sending a bunch of messages.
And the screen, because you can run it without a screen now, right?
Yes, I can actually.
So the Heltec V3s all had screens. A lot of times stuff looks like this, where it's a solar node and it's up a building or a tree or whatever, and we'll get into that a little more. But sometimes a display is not a need, and not having it is great for the battery.
Yeah, where you might be at an advantage hardware-wise if you had a node like this that did a half a watt, and you were doing it with ham radio, would be using like a high gain directional antenna that puts you over 4 watts ERP.
I guess you could
That
do
would
that.
be-
You could amplify it.
You can also buy regular ham radio operators. We have these amplifiers for our hotspots, right? Those hotspots that only do 100 milliwatts. They make those little amplifiers that'll make them output 4 or 5 watts. You could certainly buy one of those and it would work. This is not full duplex or anything, so would work just fine. But you got to make sure if you have your ham license, you're IDing every 10 minutes, right? This is just like talking on the radio. So another consideration of going that route and the higher power is you're also, no matter what, going to be transmitting every 10 minutes a signal with your call sign. So
Bill, I got a
did I
question.
go backwards?
Again,
Yes, sir.
am I wrong in the rules of FCC, but how do you get around the encryption?
You don't. So when you go in the app, there's actually a section in the app that says, I'm a ham radio operator. I'm a licensed ham radio operator. When you click that,
License mode, yeah.
the app will actually disable any ability to do encryption.
And it's by your choice. So, you can choose to do license mode and,
Or not.
Yeah, or not.
Yeah.
However, like a lot of my friends who are hams, who are just getting into this, so it's a good thing we're telling you all this up front, because if you get in there and you're like, oh man, I'm a ham, I'll unlock more features. I'm a licensed operator. Like everyone throws that stuff in and like, oh, it disabled my encryption. And it's like, oh yeah, that's by design.
I did that at first and found out the hard way. I was like, well, why isn't my encryption working now? I was like, oh, all right, I can't do that. So let's talk about what this can do. So we've talked about Part 95 ham radio, but how can ham radio operators specifically take advantage of the Meshtastic system? So here's a few things that I came up with. One was the FCC Part 97.109. And that is the cessation of automatic control, aka out-of-band control. People talk about, we got to have out-of-band control of our repeaters. We have to have the ability to remotely shut down a repeater or remotely operated radio, and these can do that. So there are GPIO, did I say it right? GPIO pins on there where you could hook a relay and you could send a signal to shut something down, turn something off, reset something. Maybe you have something up on a tower or a building and you're like, I got to go through security, get up the elevator, go up there and hit the reset button, and I don't have internet up there. This is a great way to have a wireless reset button. These also transmit environmental data. So if you have a repeater site, you can keep an eye on what's the barometric pressure, what's the humidity like there. Did the AC go out on my tower building and it's burning up in there now? Do I want to send weather data from there? I can get the wind direction and speed. I can measure current and voltage. Is my repeater that normally pulls 10 amps of power, is it pulling 20 amps today, and why? So all of that data, it's kind of, think of it almost like a little mini SCADA system. It's not SCADA, but it's a mini SCADA system where you can get some information on the perimeters of your repeater's environment. Go ahead, you had a question?
I'm assuming that's not a stock feature of the node, though, right? That sounds like a bunch of extra modules added on.
There,
Kind of.
it will do some of that natively in the app, and if you buy the right radio, there are radios that have full sensors built into them.
You talked about Heltec, so like you have pins on your Heltec for stuff like that.
Hopefully I will sometime in the future. I'm buying Heltex.
Oh, okay, cool. But anyway, a lot of these nodes that are out there now aren't purpose-built for Meshtastic. They're LoRa development platforms, and because of that, they're built for someone to develop software for that hardware, and before they develop custom hardware. So like you get a lot of boards that have GPIO, outputs just kind of by default.
Right.
Speakers and stuff as well. Like all these, like I have a watch down here. It's a development watch package. I'll show you guys that during show and tell. But it's an S3 watch.
No.
Sorry, where is it going with that? And anyway, in the app, in Meshtastic, it actually supports a lot of the sensor data stuff out the box. It also supports detection sensors. So if you had like a large property, and you wanted to have a node out by like a motion sensor by your gate, or you wanted to do gate control or something like that, you could do that stuff. And that's native, like within the Meshtastic app, you can see that stuff, detection sensor and all that for configs.
So we talked about frequencies earlier. I know up on the screens in here, it might be a little bit of an eye test, so I'm going to summarize this, but essentially in North America, by default, we're on the 915 ISM band. Maximum power output is 30 dBm, 1 watt. There are default frequencies that we use, although there's nothing to keep you from saying, I want my own little network of my family or the neighborhood watch group, and we want to be on our own frequency. As long as you're within the ISM band, you can do it. And you can set your own frequency manually. Over in Europe, they're using 868 megahertz, and they're even more restricted than us. Yay, freedom. They only get 27 dBm versus our 30. So, hey, that's 3 dB. What's that? Twice the power, right? And then the interesting thing is they also have 433 megahertz. Well, who else can transmit on 433 megahertz? I know I can.
Yep.
So there's a lot of interest of getting these European radios on 433 megahertz, and obviously that can't be used as an ISM thing, so we would turn encryption off, put our call signs on it, and now we have something that is an exclusive ham mesh net. So there are some of those up around the country as well, and that's just another opportunity, another band, another opportunity, and we would also be within our power limits, not the measly 10 dBm that they have on 433. So let's talk about roles. So each node has a role they play, just like network hardware, right? In your network hardware, you have a network interface card that is in a computer. You have a router, you have servers, you have bridges. So you have different, just like any other network, you have different devices that play a different role. On Meshtastic, one physical device can play any of those roles depending on how you set it. So we have some roles here. I'm not going to go through this entire screen But the most important ones to know are client. Client is what you will be using out of the box. And I would say about somewhere between 90 and 99.99% of the nodes should be set to client.
Yeah, like a lot of people think
Yeah.
like, oh, I want to transmit too. I'm going to switch to router.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Or-
that's not the case here.
I got my node up on my chimney in my neighborhood. I'm the router now. That's usually not the best case. So when in doubt, you set your radio to client. If you're like, I don't know if I want to be a router, a tracker, client hidden, whatever, you set it to client by default. Routers should be for nodes that are up high, that have high uptime, backup power, things like that.
Well, it also
So-
shuts off your Bluetooth and stuff. So
Yeah, when you go to router mode, your Bluetooth goes into standby, your Wi-Fi goes into standby, and it's kind of out there on its own. Yes, ma'am.
What elevation, like away from sea level, should I be considering if I wanted to make a router node?
how tall are the trees?
I would think more like, and I'm sorry to do this, I know it's a little bit rude, but I'm gonna fix your question.
Okay.
What should my height above average terrain be? So what is around me? Am I the tallest thing around me?
Yeah.
So if I'm on a 5-story building and the tallest things around me are, a couple of 20-foot tall oak trees, that might be a good opportunity for a router for that area. If I'm on a 5-story building and I'm surrounded by 20-story buildings, I should probably not be the router. So, and I put a little note in here. The node on your chimney should not be a router.
And
So
there's roles.
the roof of your house is probably not tall enough.
Yeah, and just to add to that, like, it's a mesh network. So, it'll fill in the gaps with more nodes. So like one thing a lot of people do, if they're at home and they have multiple nodes like us, is you might have a big node outside that's set as client base, and then have your other nodes inside that are your clients. And then, you can basically use that outside node to rebroadcast those messages, big solar node up high, to make sure that your indoor nodes are going to get those messages, with all the interference from, trees and everything else.
And again, if you don't know, or you don't know what's around you, it's good to kind of come to a meeting, meet up with a local group, get on Discord. There's a lot of activity on Discord of people coordinating,
Yeah.
and just say, hey, I have access to building, ABC. It's located here. They're going to let me put a node up. Would this be a good place to put a router? And someone may say, well, I'm on a building 2 blocks over that's twice as high, and I already have a router there. Then you might be something like what they call router late, meaning that if his goes down, yours can kind of act as a lower altitude backup. And what yours will do is listen and say, oh, someone's already routed that signal. I'm not going to do it. That's what router late does. So there's different settings. So client mute, there's one called client mute. This one here is set to client mute, meaning that it will never repeat a signal. It'll listen, it'll send what I want to send, but it's never going to repeat a signal. I did that for me for a few reasons. One, I bring this into places and meetings and things like that where there's already a lot of nodes set to client. There's probably already a router in the area, and I don't want to be one more thing possibly unnecessarily transmitting. 2, battery life. The less this radio transmits, as we know, the longer its battery life is going to be. And this being a 0.5 watt radio with, I think these are like 300 or 3,000 milliamp hour batteries, they're not going to last long if it's sitting there trying to repeat everything. There's other roles like tracker, where I talked about earlier, people are putting these things in their cars to track, or I've heard of people putting them in their kids' backpacks to track them. Yeah. There's a lost and found mode. There's sensor only mode where you're just sending sensor data. We talked about router late. There's one, okay, so I'm gonna definitely talk about this because most of us are ham radio operators, and we know what a repeater is. Repeater is like router, but it just aggravates everybody because they'll never see it in it doesn't report out any of its information. It doesn't say, hi, I'm a repeater and I'm this. So it's kind of, think of it like if you had a ham radio repeater that was on a frequency, it never ID'd, it never said its call sign, you had no idea where it was, what building it was on, but you just heard it on your radio one day and you knew it was in the ham band. One, it would be illegal, but two, it would be very irritating that you don't know whose repeater this is. You don't know what it is or where it is. So that's what you're doing if you set your node to repeater. You're just aggravating a bunch of people. It acts just like router, but it won't give any information as far as here's where I am, here's what I am, here's my name. Here's how your data got routed. Your data got routed via Panda over here. If I said something to him and he passed it along on router, we would know who said it, who sent it to us. On repeater, we have no clue. And it drives people bonkers. I don't know if you've ever been in an environment where someone had repeater on. So this is just an example of some of the hardware. When I first got into this, there were really like 3 manufacturers and like maybe 5 pieces of hardware you could get. Now it's dozens.
It's a lot. Yeah.
So a lot of opportunity out there. You can get hardware all the way from $20. Actually, I think the Heltec V3s are $16 right now. I think the most expensive node right now is like 200 something. That's like a solar backup high gain antenna.
The little NRF nodes are like $11, and also if you have any ESP32s at all, you can get a LoRa module and plug that into the ESP32, and then load your own, kind of DIY Meshtastic firmware. And to that point, if you wanted to develop your own hardware and make your own boards, it's one step beyond that. Just design your own board.
So this is just the basic outdoor node. This is what a lot of people have up on their chimneys or on a pole or strapped to a pine tree possibly. There's really 4 components to this if you think about it, 5 I guess. We have our outdoor weatherproof box. We have our LoRa radio, batteries, because the sun's not always out, right? And these are 2 18650 cells, antenna, which in this case is just a little low gain antenna, and then a little 6-watt solar panel bolted to the front of it. That's the whole setup. I think these, if you DIY it, depending on what radio you get and how high quality batteries and whether you use 1 battery or 2 and things like that, these can be put together for under $100.
And there's ready-made Wise Block nodes for I think $120 out there.
Yeah.
If you just want to buy something off the shelf, they have some really nice options.
Yep. So this is kind of one of the newer pieces of hardware that's out there now. This is what's running inside of this radio right here, the Heltec V4. We talked about Heltec a lot. That's kind of a lot of people's first radio just because they're so affordable. There are some things to consider though. Go ahead, did you have?
I was just going to say one thing that is really decent about Heltec is right now they're kind of the Honda Civic of radios. So you can get a fancier radio, but it's going to be more exotic. It might, not be as well supported. It might not have as good documentation. The nice thing about these is, even beyond Meshtastic, there's other things that you could load on it. They're really well supported. If there's any issues, because there are so many of them out there, it's a huge thing. It's just like if you had a Honda Civic and you need to buy parts for your Civic, they're everywhere because everyone has them.
Yeah.
You can drive something exotic, but then it's going to be more difficult, more expensive to deal with.
So some things to consider with the cheaper nodes, you are still getting what you're paying for. Depending on which one you get, you can get this one with a GPS, but the cheaper ones don't have a GPS in them. They don't include a battery. We talked about this earlier. They are 5-watt transmit or 0.5 watt, half-watt transmit power, but you can get this for less than $30. So you're starting out with a decent radio and you're under $30. There is a model with no display. So for example, the base station radio at my house is up in a place where I can't see it well at all, and there's no advantage to me of having a display on it. So I bought the model with no display. If I'm at a base and it's not moving, I don't want GPS, so I bought the model without GPS, and that cost me about a whopping $20. So the last example, again, there's a ton more. This is more of a out-of-the-box, nothing to add, everything's included deal. And it's got GPS, battery, a case. A lot of these cases you can 3D print yourself if anybody has a 3D printer or has a buddy with a 3D printer. So the only thing I would do to this is put a better antenna on it. A lot of these radios just come with little stubby antennas. It's just something to transmit into so you don't burn up your radio. That's really all it is. They have good SWR, but little to no gain. The same rules of radio apply with ham radio, right? This is why you see these guys with handhelds with the antennas like that. They get more signal out of them. They get more distance. So getting rid of the little stubby antennas, like this one came with an antenna that tall, and now I have a actual gain antenna on it, and it has made a difference. Another one here is just another manufacturer. This is called the LilyGo T-Beam. This is another one that a lot of people started on. These aren't quite as popular now as they used to be, I don't think. Just because there's so many other options. And this one's kind of middle of the road here because you don't have a case, but you are getting a display, a GPS, no battery, but you can 3D print a case for these too. I've done it. All right. So some of our resources and some of the things we wanted to leave you with, the big one for our local group is jacksmesh.com. Is it .com or .org?
We have both.
We have both.
Good
job, man.
If .com basically messes with you, it's a little fancier of a page. .org. I actually don't own .org, but we kind of started the stuff around the same time, and we decided to just work together basically, and we converted .org to like a more basic site. So if like .com is like too fancy for your device and it's slow or whatever else, or you have issues, just go to .org.
Yeah. So that's jacksmesh.com. The other one is meshtastic.org. That's the official website for the project, and you can spend all night reading documentation on the different modes. So if you want to dive into how every mode works, different radios, different processors in the radios, all kinds of information. A neat one, if you want to get an idea, maybe you haven't bought anything, you're like, I want to get an idea. If I buy this radio and I put it on my chimney that's 20 feet tall and I use this antenna, about how far could I reach? They have a propagation map where you can enter all that in, and it will tell you you'll get so many dBm this far out. So that's site.meshtastic.org. There's one called map, Are You Meshing With Us? Are You Meshing.us? Also known as the Florida Mesh map.
That's the map I was talking about, where using MQTT, they map out the majority of the Florida nodes. Obviously, if you're not transmitting to that, or you're not near a node that is transmitting to that, then those nodes are going to be caught. But it's a good representation of the state. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And our most local vendor is in Gainesville. So if you wanted to get something, if you got real excited and you wanted to get something next day, although you can get a lot of things next day on Amazon too, right?
Well, the cool thing about that is Rockland's actually a pretty big shop.
Yeah.
They sell a ton of Wise Block stuff. They were one of the first shops that kind of got into the Meshtastic scene. So